So let me start off by saying that the experience isn't for everyone. The experience isn't for everyone. The experience that I have been relaying for these past couple weeks now, going through the allegory of the Exodus, discussing the elements therein, the covenant to be formed, the plagues to be given, the conversation to be left behind, the war against the gods of, the battle against self, the battle against the mind of the devotional persuasion, and against denominated theory. This experience isn't for everyone. And I think that's also something that we have got to come to grips with. There are a lot of individuals that will hear me speaking and that will hear me say something along the lines of, well, the Bible needs to be inward. And while that may make sense, hearing more of, well, instead of just being inward, the Bible actually needs to be kind of left alone, and we need to experience what we are receiving inwardly, to where the Bible is no longer becoming a book that we are idolizing or that we need to crave for some specific reason, but that we go to from time to time, just as we would go to a friend time to time for guidance or for counsel, or for parent from time to time for counsel or for guidance while we are living our life. The words of the Bible are to be the counsel for our devotional conversation, the parent to our devotional conversation. And it's not going to be um, a special kind of thing for all to hear. That the conversation is initially, one, created in religious error, two, that religious error belongs to the religious world. The religious error within the religious world is an Egyptian paradigm of a consistent from age to age, century to century, whatever you want to say, trinity, trio, triad of a one creator, father type mind figure, two of a female particular essence, queen of heaven type figure, three, son, also adhering to and assisting in creation and also a part of that trinity forming the whole. The idea of the Exodus is an escape from this paradigm. And the escape from this paradigm is so that the individual conversation and so that the individual human being can get to know one another, to form a personal covenant with one another through what they're going through and with the words that are within the scriptures that are guiding their exodus from that experience. Now, not everyone is going to care for such an experience. Not everyone is going to hear what that is and enjoy it. This is not for everyone. This is for specifically hand-picked souls. And you can liken it to how in the natural life, right? In the natural life, many of us may be struggling to find employment. Many of us may be struggling in a relationship. Many of us may be struggling with ourselves. Many of us may be struggling with something and we're not getting it. Or we're having, for example, jobs and we're losing these jobs every 6 months, every year and a half, just going, washing, rinsing, recycling the life that we have. Because we know, not for anything particular wrong with us, but we know that there is something more to our life that's not being fed. We know that there's something more to our life that is not being fed. And so we're leaving these jobs or we're going for interviews and we're not getting hired because we understand something's a little off about what's going on here. And the offness isn't you. The offness isn't anything that has to do with you particularly, but the offness has everything to do with what you are. The offness has everything to do with what you are. Because if we're going through those experiences and if we're feeling that, well, then that means there's something more to what we're feeling. That there's a truth to it that we have to acknowledge. We have to acknowledge that truth. That our life, even though we're going through what we're going through, there's a greater care for our mind that has to be given. There's a greater care for our person that has to be given. There's a greater lifestyle. And I'm not talking about material. I'm talking about personal, inward, mental culture. that the environments that we are signing up to be in, life just knows that they aren't suitable, even though we need them to live. It is as if life would rather have us destitute than to have us in those types of situations because we cannot seem to land them despite us needing them. It's sort of likened to that, in that sort of natural aspect, but it's for the devotional conversation. There are individuals that are hearing the things that I have to say, and they will not like them because I'm cutting away the very fabric of what gives their religion power and of what gives them credibility to maintain their religion in power. Many individuals that will hear this type of message of the Exodus being an allegory for the personal devotional conversations, regeneration, and resurrection, and will not like it. They will not like it because it's just not for them. The confines of the religious world are their border. They will reach no higher than the clouds, their words, nor their experience. There is something within that is not allowing them to give way to the type of conversation they know they should be allowing the conversation to have, and that's it's completely fine. But everything that I have been saying thus far, there has to be an acknowledgement that this experience isn't for everybody. This experience, despite how we may be going through it and wanting another to go through it, and the other isn't seeing it, we have to know that this experience, this isn't for us. Just like how we can go through an experience of the job not hiring us, or the interviewer not giving us a call back, or we've had two interviews and then all of a sudden no call back, just completely dropped. It is as if life is doing something to tell us something, and we have to listen to that because we may get so caught up in believing that we are the issue, that we are the problem, that we are not getting to where we need to be. That and granted, that may be it. There may be an attitude adjustment that may be needed. But at the same time, the consistent experience is revealing something more that we have to give attention to. And the more that we have to give attention to is something that's within. And the part that's within that needs to be taken into further consideration is the conscience and the experience of the devotional conversation, whatever we may call that to be, whatever level of life or understanding we may section that as, or that needs to be in more consideration. And that type of consideration isn't for everyone. Who it is for, though, who it is for, is for the individual that is tired. Is for the individual that is tired of themselves, and that is tired of the people around them. That is tired not simply of material depravity, but of not being rich within. And not necessarily rich within, of not having internal wealth. Internal wealth meaning character, and character that can edify another to pursue the same type of character development that should be inspired. That's what the allegory of the Exodus is about. And that allegory and the routine and the choice to make that Exodus from the format of the traditional denominated theological religion or theory or opinion, that's not for everybody, but it's for the individual that knows there's something more within themselves that needs to be taken into consideration. And that's a very specific individual that is seemingly handpicked, but really not. It is the individual that is willing to take their self beyond. The individual that knows there's a cry within and that will let that cry have voice. Imagine how it feels that when you cry. Imagine how it feels. You're crying for a particular bad reason. But as you're crying, all that you can do in frustration is to let the tears flow because that's all you've got. It's all you've got. And when that session is over for however long that is, you end up feeling as if you've gone through a bit of a therapy there. It's therapeutic, the release of those tears. the release of that frustration, because that's all you've got. That's all you can do. The individual willing to let the tears of their conversation pour out, as it says in the psalm, that are willing to make a covenant with me by sacrifice. Remember, the tears of such individuals will not be neglected, it says also in the Psalms. And so our conversation has to be able to cry out for its own condition and for the hope that it has for its own self. That's the same sort of situation that we may find ourselves in a natural sense, except instead of being in the natural work environment, we are in a denominated religious environment. Same sort of feeling is there, because the same sort of feeling that more is needed or that more is desired, demanded. Our conversation is requesting of us more, and we have to give it. And the way to give it, it begins with removing self from what the Bible outlines. And that's another thing, is that we have to remember that this is an experience given by the mind inspiring the scriptures. Now, the experience given by the mind inspiring the scriptures isn't going to be for everybody. It's cool we may be going through what we're going through in the scriptures, and it's cool we may be finding out new things and cool things about the scriptures, but it's really difficult to open it up to another individual that's not wanting the same reform personally for their human being. Because at the core of all of this, despite what may be fanatical or phenomenal or engaging or stimulating, we all do begin our journey within the scriptures from the standpoint of wanting our human being bettered in some way. We may get lost along the way due to the Kool-Aid of the religious world, sipping on that. But once we can get ourselves back, we can realize the deception. And realizing the deception, that's when the Exodus begins. And not everybody, again, not everybody is going to be open to understanding the deception that the general format of the Egyptian religion is. The idea of getting caught up in the, again, as I mentioned, the trio, getting caught up in the system of embalming, getting caught up in the system of the feasts and all of these offerings and rituals and ceremonies. All of these are connected to the foundational Egyptian religion. Our conversation, again, is to exit this. And not everyone hearing such a message, because they are emotionally tied to the Horus, because they are emotionally tied to the Osiris, because they are emotionally tied to the Isis, because they are emotionally tied, can't get past the theory or the opinion for the inauguration of an experience. And the inauguration of that experience is one that the Bible highlights by saying in the book of Ephesians 4, be renewed in the spirit of your mind, by saying in the Psalms, within the inward parts you would have me to know wisdom and truth. Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. The theme is an Exodus. But what we have to realize is that the Bible is written deceptively. The Bible is written deceptively. And it's written deceptively not by anything of its own nature, uh, due to the philosophical minds that put it together, sure. But for us now living at this time, it is a deception because it is written in story. And it is made to believe that it is story. And it's made to believe that it is real story. The context of the minds that wrote it are not taken into consideration because we, due to whatever we have within ourselves, are not allowing it. And again, that will be not for everybody. Such an experience to not allow the Bible to be what it's supposed to be is not for everybody. From the surface lay to the surface scholar, that will be what it will be. The experience will be vain and vanity and will hinge on vain things and vanity, imagination. Again, that's not for That's an experience that's not for who I am engaging with at this point in time. The individual that understands the conversation is confined to an experience that it should be not having, and that it is greater than the experience that it is having. That's really who this conversation is about. Because the conversation wanting to feel right will remain within the concept, within the paradigm of the religious world. Wanting to feel right will remain within the concept and within the paradigm of the religious world. But the conversation that wants to be right will be right in its mind. The conversation that wants to be right will be right within its mind. There's a difference between being right and feeling right. The paradigm of the Exodus is a feeling right type of paradigm. But the Exodus flips it, right? Because the Exodus is about they were enslaved. They were enslaved and they were crying out. The feeling wasn't a right feeling. We have to take this into consideration because the Exodus is a story that mixes and mingles together different legends. It is not as literal as we may assume it to be. So the Bible being a book not of a historical primary nature or of a literal nature primarily, the context is ultimately philosophical and secondarily, you could say, religious. The slavery, in right context, is religious slavery. It is simply framed in a political dialogue. That's the you gotta understand the language there in the context. That slavery, they felt it and they cried out. But not everybody hearing this type of message will feel the slavery to begin to cry out. And when going through this type of journey, right? Because this is a journey. This is a journey from what we thought we knew to what we know we ought to know. A journey from what we think we know to what we think we ought to know. So going through such a journey is one that is completely disruptive and disheartening and depressing. But for the individual soul that is serious about the condition of their human being, and for the individual mind that is concerned for the condition of their devotional conversation, it won't be such a journey. It won't be so difficult. It will be one of alleviation despite the frustration that one has to go through. Because as we can see from that journey that within the Bible concerning the Exodus, it was very frustrating. It was very frustrating. Those members were speaking out, just as the members within us will speak out. But the individual journey isn't for everyone. The conversation finding health and alleviation by words isn't for everybody. The conversation finding a right feeling through ritual, through theory, is for everybody. What isn't for everybody is an experience with words, where words are judging the conscience of the conversation. Where words are judging the conscience of the conversation, this is not for everyone because that is a mental experience. That is an experience that is inward. That is an experience that is reflective. The individual that is tied to the cause of religion and to the cause of the trio and to the cause of the gods and to the cause of the rituals and to the ceremonies, their mind isn't geared towards what is within them to the point of wanting to be separate from it, as the illustration shows. The book of Romans, chapter 6, as he died once to sin, he died once to all. The conversation is to go through a period, and that's what the Exodus is about, of dying. Dying to the former mind. Dying to the former mind. Dying to the former mind. So that now the new mind can emerge. in that new emerging mind with principles tracing back, sure, tracing back to the mind inspiring the scriptures, as I said last week, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and Genesis chapter 3, laying the foundation of what that is. So, laying the foundation of what that is, the conversation going through such an experience. But that won't be for everybody. That will be just for a certain soul. And for that certain soul, the allegory becomes real. The allegory of personal devotional growth and development. That individual soul seeing this and understanding that there is more to their conversation and not being put down by a deceptive religious institution or an irrelevant denominated understanding or theory or a repulsive opinion of institutional understanding or denominated theory. Such a conversation picking themselves up to go through an experience of regeneration and resurrection alone. Again, that call isn't for everyone. As it says in the book of Isaiah, remember your father Abraham and Sarah who gave birth to you. I called him alone and increased him. The journey is one that has to be alone. And to the specifically chosen or handpicked soul to go through this, there's nothing wrong with that. There's everything right with that. The entire landscape of this world, as the air is sectioned out for the lungs, as the air that we breathe is sectioned out for the lungs, the landscape of this living sphere is that the mind, or should I say, the mind of the human being is to be enraptured by religion. As the air is to the lungs, the mind within the human being is to be enraptured by religion. There's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing I can do about that. Publicly or as a whole. That's just the way that this environment that we are living in called Earth, this realm and this matrix is governed, is set up. That's just how it is. It's set up that way. But the illustration of the Exodus points to a different understanding. The illustration of Adam points to a different understanding. Adam being formed from the dust. Adam being formed from the dust. The dust in scripture is connected to the sand of the sea or seed. I will make thy seed as the dust. I will make thy seed as the stars. Adam being formed from the dust is Adam being formed from a particular seed of peoples. The birth of the generation of the creation of this figure in Genesis chapter 2 is not literal. This is allegorical. This is allegorical. The same Exodus from the book of Exodus is the same Exodus from Genesis chapter 2 concerning the regeneration of Adam. This is the consistent theme within the scriptures. Over and over again, it will just replay because that's just how the operation goes. On the surface level, there is the deception of the trio Egyptian religion. No matter where you go, no matter what religion it is, Babylonian, Sumerian, Akkadian, Christian, Hindu, or everything, it all Islam, it all falls down to the same trio, presently, anciently, beyond the ancient. This is the general format of this realm called Earth when it comes to religion. And this is the enrapturing of what the human being is designed to fall into a line with. Is designed. This is our design. Well, while that's the design, and while on the surface, the Bible gives the outline of that design, the deity for that design, the deity requiring sacrifices and offerings and such, the deity requiring such fees from the human being as to maintain feasts and ceremonies and all such things, as this is the surface experience. Underneath the Bible, underneath it, is the real experience. The real experience, which is a continually repeating theme of an Exodus from that surface experience. So if our conversation is passing through thoughts and feelings of not being pleased or catered to by our denominated understanding and by the lore of mother and father passed down to us, or by scholar or by guru in the realm of religion or in the realm of religious philosophy, it's no accident. It's no accident. And we not trip over the thought or over the feeling that we're going through to go to an extreme, because that is simply a feeling and a thought of what is within us calling out for something higher. And calling out for something higher, an exodus is demanded. And that demanding exodus isn't for everyone, just like that call. Just like that call, or should I say that call being a feeling, just like that feeling of wrong isn't a for everyone, isn't given for everyone. Everyone may receive something of, of something that, hey, this isn't right. What's going on here? But not everyone is going to take the time to take the steps to reverse what they have been passing through for something higher, to understand something more, to understand something decent for the particular individual, for the particular individual experience, and for the particular individual devotional conversation passing through a particular experience, and alongside the words that have been taken and used to cause the mind to hate its particular experience. That once we can manage to get past that, we are that particular individual mind that is called to go through such an experience for the well-being of our human being, called for such an experience to go through healing our devotional conversations conscience, for a more filling human experience, because we're going back, as I started with, going back to the job part and the work part and the not holding on to particular work because we're not getting hired. And it's really not us in a sense, even though again it may be, but life is doing something to cut us off, to do something to let these people not give us the opportunity that we know we need in order to live. Well, the moment we can begin to get what is within us taken care of, forget everybody else. Forget everybody else doing what they're doing. It's about us now. It's about sectioning us out to us. The moment we can get what is within us taken care of, well, that is the moment we can then begin to understand the culture of our individual person. And understanding the culture of our individual person, well, we can have passion arise. Have passion arising, we can understand industry, and industry arise. Understanding industry and having industry arise, we can then turn our attention to what is for us. Instead of passing through experiences that will suck our soul, that will deplete our energies, that we will be around these miserable folks that we know, that we may actually not know, but what is within us may know is not for us. And yet we do this because we have to maintain a physical, material life just to survive. When what is within us can get a better grasp on what is within its own self, that's when the revelation will appear. And that's when our pursuits will be one of, although still passing through struggle to get to where it needs to be, one of happiness and one of contentment, and to one of where we can be where we need to be while still maintaining the same mental culture that we need to have. And who knows, we may end up finding out that we have something within us that is business wise, and then maintaining a life that is absent from the public sphere, that is absent in that we are dependent on self, reliant on self for the material existence, and yet self reliant upon the words of the scripture for a holistic mental or philosophical experience, and repeating the cycle until we can get it right. It'll take time. It will take time. But that's the journey. And again, this journey isn't for everyone. This journey is for the willing soul. It may appear to be the handpicked individual, but the individual within themselves that know that they are worth more. We have to take into consideration our worth. We can't let the experiences we go through continue to deprive us of our worth. We can't let the instances that we go through continue to make us feel as though we're not as intelligent as we need to get ourselves straight. Because the moment we can get the energy within ourselves straight, the energy outside of us will align with what is within us. We may be seeing a physical kind of life going on here, but the philosophy that is within the scriptures is for the core energy within, for the core energy that is without, the output from the input. What we can put within, which are words of an experience, and just maintain. Go through the frustration, go through the tears, go through what we need to go through, because that is an exodus from what we thought we know to what we know we think we ought to know. That's going to be dreadful to go through. Sure, let that be what it will be, but don't get caught up in the feeling, because it's not you going through it. It is your conversation going through it. It is the development of your conversation's conscience that is passing through growth and development, not you. And that's why I spent so much time going through the need to separate the human being from the being of the conversation, because we get so caught up, religion gets us so caught up to think that we are it and that it is us. It is a human spiritual experience masquerading as something devotional, when it's really just human impulse guided by ego and a worship to self, in a sense. That's the surface. And the Bible tells us this. This isn't anything, this isn't anything new. This isn't anything like strange. This is all in the Bible. The Bible tells us this. But what the Bible also tells us is that though this is the way it is, there's also an experience out of it. But you have to be able to recognize where you are in order to want to know who you are. And that's where the Bible kicks in. That's the extended philosophy to the individual mind wanting to care for the devotional conversations, thoughts, and feelings. That extended philosophy will not be given to anyone that is confined and content to be confined within the paradigm of popular religious tradition and Egyptian in nature. Again, this will not be extended to them. And again, I'm not talking to such an individual. I'm talking to you, who understands that there is more to your conversation than what may appear. And I'm breaking down from the Bible's perspective of what we ought to do when we're coming across such a feeling. The Exodus, the plagues of understanding that are to be applied as we study and experience what is within the Bible. Putting the Bible aside and letting what is within it work, and returning therein when needed. Stepping away from opinion and theory, moving away from ceremony and rite, baptism and theory and such as the handwritten commandments present and ancient. Allowing the conversation to flow into its wilderness experience and into that journey, to understand principles familiar only to it. There are only principles familiar only to the scriptures. Only individuals that are passing through this journey with the Bible will know the principles within it. Only that mind. And again, that mind isn't everyone and is not going to be called for everyone. But if the individual is recognizing something wrong, and if the individual cares, well, the Bible will extend its philosophy to that individual and guide that individual into an experience where it can recover itself fully. And that's the point. The point is the recovery of the human being. The point is the recovery of the character of the self through the growth and through the development of the devotional conversation. Problem is, what's stunting the growth of our human being is what's stunting the growth of our personal devotional conversation. And that is the paradigm of Egypt. We have to see this. We have to accept it. And when I'm saying we, again, this isn't everybody, because everybody won't be as mindful. This is for the individual wanting a deeper relationship with themselves, health for the human being, and a greater fondness for the devotional character that the living God has, to adopt it, personally, to live it entirely. And so I'll end here with that thought. For whatever we go through during this week, sure, I always say for creation, but also remember that what you're going through isn't for everyone. So if you're feeling struggle, if you're feeling something off, if depression is clouding, celebrate it. Celebrate it. Take joy in it. Take joy in it because that is the invisible thinking and sensing mind within life, seeing what is within you worthy of an exodus. Take that into consideration throughout this entire week and simply regain the lost consciousness through such a journey.